Hello everyone, I hope you are doing good and welcome to the small corner of the internet. Make yourself at home, grab some tea or coffee because today we are talking about books. So instead of a monthly wrap-up, we are doing a quarterly wrap-up. This means I will tell you about the wonderful and maybe not so wonderful books I read from January till March of this year. We have some YA fantasy, historical stories, some manga, and even a classic. So yeah, a great bunch of variety. I don't know what exactly, but I probably put some kind of speed drawing or gameplay in the background, as you will see now. So you can have the video as background noise if you want to. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. The first book I finished this year was Red Queen. Red Queen is a typical YA fantasy dystopian story. It tells the story of 17-year-old Mare Barrow who lives in a world that's divided between those with red blood, like herself, the commoners, like they are the working people, and those with literal silver blood, the royals. Those royals have various magical powers like controlling fire or cloning and stuff like that. So yeah, I think this book was well beloved by many, especially when it came out a few years ago. So I hope this is not too controversial when I say this, but I just didn't really like this book. Which is a shame because I like the overall idea. I like the concept of this world, but the execution just didn't really work for me. There is the typical chosen one trope, a love triangle, but also a corrupt government / royal house. There's critique on class and war, intrigues and spying. So that's fun, but sadly, I just read like another book that was pumped out during the Hunger Games craze. And it didn't really stand out to me, so I decided to not continue the series for now. After Red Queen, I just had to read something I knew wouldn't disappoint me, and what's better for that than some good old manga? The Case Study of Vanitas is a fantasy manga series, which actually became one of my favorites. It is set in a fictional steampunk 19th century Paris, and it follows the vampire Noe archivist, as well as our mysterious Vanitas, who is on a quest to heal cursed vampires. I mean, need I say more? Give me anything set in 19th century Europe and I will devour it. I started collecting and reading the manga in 2021, I think. And this January I read volume 8 and 9, which were both really good. Next, I didn't read, but listened to the audiobook of Touch of Darkness. Oh boy, where do I begin? So I came across this book at my local bookshop and was immediately interested because the cover looked so pretty. Then I read the blurb, and when I saw it was a Greek mythology retelling, I knew I had to read it. Specifically, it's a modern retelling of the story of Persephone and Hades, which I was a bit familiar with because I read some of the Lore Olympus webtoon, which is also Persephone and Hades retelling. Persephone is the goddess of spring who was guarded and hidden by her mother, basically her whole life. She can convince her mother to let her move to New Athens, disguised as a mortal pursuing a career as a journalist. In New Athens, she encounters Hades, who is god of the underworld, and accidentally makes a contract with him, her freedom on the line. I gave this book 3 out of 10 stars. This book is basically a billionaire, misunderstood, broody man, ex-naive, stupid decision-making girl, smutty urban fantasy, which If you're into that, I won't judge you, but just wasn't really what I was expecting, you know? I feel like they could have integrated the mythology more into the story. Following this wild ride, which was Touch of Darkness, is a book that absolutely deserves all the praise it gets. A book that took my hand and pulled me into another world, which got me marveling and on my toes at the same time. I'm talking about Piranesi. My friend and roommate read this book first in a span of a few days and absolutely loved it. So as soon as she finished it, she gave me the book to read. And I'm so glad I did. I didn't really know much about the plot other than that it's about a house with infinite rooms. And well, Piranesi, our main character, who inhabits and explores this house. And I think that's the best way to read it, honestly. So I won't tell you much more about it as well. So yeah, if you decide to read it, just let yourself be surprised. I think that's the best way. After Piranesi, I read more manga, specifically Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, volume 14 and 15. Yet another beloved manga series of mine. Toilet Bound Hanako-kun is a supernatural comedy / romance / sometimes pretty dark school story about Nene Yashiro, who summons the spirit of Hanako-san, who is actually based on Japanese mythology, and she ends up becoming his assistant, more or less, and falls headfirst into adventures fighting evil supernaturals and trying to maintain balance between the spirit world and the human world. This manga series really had me in a chokehold since the very first page. The characters are super lovable, the themes of occult stuff, mythology, and stuff like that are super my cup of tea, and the plot just keeps getting better and better. Especially volume 14 and 15 had me absolutely destroyed, and I can't wait to know how it continues. Oh, and obviously the art style is absolutely gorgeous. I'm super obsessed, and every time I open another volume of the manga or reread the story, I'm just super inspired by the art in this manga. Next up is another audiobook, She Who Became the Sun, which is a Chinese historical fantasy. It's about a starving girl who takes on her brother's name, Chu Chongba, pretends to be a boy and becomes a monk. We follow Chu Chongba go from being a monk to going to the military on her quest for greatness. The story wonderfully touches upon themes of gender and sexuality and destiny and purpose. I really liked the book, but I was pretty lost for most of it, if I'm really honest. However, I'm convinced that it's just due to the fact that I listened to it on audiobook rather than reading it. I listened a lot to it while being on the train or just being out and about, and I think I definitely would have needed to pay more attention to the book. So yeah, I absolutely want to give it another try, but next time I really need to read it and not listen to it, so I can take my time, especially with all the Chinese names and the historical setting, to really just give the book the attention it deserves. Also, I don't really know how to feel about the ending of the book. If any of you read the book, please tell me what you think about the ending, because I don't know, I'm really conflicted, and it made me really see the characters in a kind of different light. As I said, I don't really know how I feel about that. After She Who Became the Sun, I read something completely different, and that is Bunny. I came across this book on BookTube, and it's one of those where people either completely hate or love it. It follows Samantha, who goes to Warren University wanting to become a writer, and in her writing seminar is this group of girls that call each other Bunny, and they totally give off mean girls energy. So Samantha then becomes involved with these bunnies, and as she gets sucked into their world, it becomes harder and harder to know what is reality and what is not. So yeah, I was really surprised how much I liked Bunny, even though it became pretty dark and grotesque at several points. But the writing was just phenomenal, and the way it handled topics like loneliness, creativity, female friendship, and so on was something I haven't seen much in other books I read up to this point. I also think that it's really, I don't know if relatable is the right word, because as I said, the book's really dark and grotesque, but still, in a weird way, it's still relatable to people who are studying, especially in a field like creative writing or art. At least for me, it felt really relatable how the students talked to each other and how they interacted with their teachers, and just the whole setting felt in a weird way familiar. Now we reach the books I read in the month of March. The first one being House Moving Castle. So I'm sure a lot of you are very much familiar with the story. I myself am a huge House Moving Castle enjoyer. It's my favorite Studio Ghibli movie, if I'm honest. So it's a bit of a surprise that it took me so long to read the book it was based on. I think I put it off for so long because I heard that the plot is quite different and that Howl is a lot meaner and more annoying in the book. So I think I was afraid of not liking it and therefore didn't read it for so long. But in the beginning of March I got sick, I catched the Rona, and I really needed some cozy story to keep me company. So yeah, I read House Moving Castle, and I'm really glad I did. It is true, the plot and also the characters are in some points quite different from the Studio Ghibli adaptation, but different doesn't always mean worse, and definitely not in this case. I really enjoyed the book, and I really can't say if I loved the movie or the book more. They are both, in their own right, absolutely wonderful and perfect if you need something cozy. The next book I read was a classic from an author who has yet to disappoint me. I'm talking about Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. I actually don't really know how to pronounce the title of the book correctly because it is a German book, so I would say Siddhartha, but in English it's maybe Siddhartha, but it's also set in India, so it's probably pronounced completely different from both of these. But yeah, Siddhartha is about a young man who leaves his home and goes on a journey to find enlightenment and inner peace. On his journey, he meets many people who teach him various lessons. I'm always blown away how timeless the work of Hesse is, and that his books that were written a century ago are still relevant and relatable today. And of course, I'm always happy to read something that was written in my mother language. Yeah, this one was definitely a journey, but I will say it's definitely a book that needs the right time and place, and that's different for everybody. Doing a total 180 here, the next two books and also the last two books I've read in March are from a YA fantasy trilogy, which are Kingdom of the Wicked and Kingdom of the Cursed. So at this point I still wasn't really feeling well. I was still a bit sick and I needed something that was easy to read, that could help me escape into another world for a bit of a time, and what always does that for me is YA fantasy. I heard about Kingdom of the Wicked on YouTube and it sounded like perfectly fit the bill of what I needed at the moment. So we follow Emilia, a young witch in Sicily, who lives there with her parents, grandma, and twin sister Vittoria. Since they were little, the twins were taught to not show their powers, to avoid persecution, to not use the dark arts, and most importantly, to beware the 7 princes of hell, who are basically the 7 sins personified. As you might guess, we have enemies to lovers, dark romance here, but the story also contains a murder mystery. But yeah, I won't tell you more than that. I want to keep this spoiler free. I quite enjoyed the first book. I thought the concept of the 7 sins as princes was intriguing, but what I really loved most were the parts of Emilia and her family. Them running the cute little restaurant together, and just the overall vibe of this plot set on a small Mediterranean island. Sadly, all of those things just weren't really a thing in the second book. The second book focused more on the romance part, and it's just a lot of push and pull, a lot of yearning, a lot of not communicating about one's feelings. And yeah, I don't know, the book kind of lost me there. So yeah, as I now finished Kingdom of the Cursed, I'm not really sure if I want to continue the story. I probably at some point will, because there's only 1 book left. Normally, maybe I wouldn't continue, but of course it ended on a cliffhanger, so yeah, we'll see about that. And that's it. We've made it to the end. These were all the books I've read in the first quarter of 2023. I have no idea how long this video will be. I hope it doesn't totally go beyond the scope, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed spending time with me. Definitely tell me which books you guys read and enjoyed until now. And yeah, I wish you all well, stay safe, and till next time. Bye!